You'll notice that the electric bike cover has already been painted black. We did use a plastic primer just to make sure that adhesion will be perfect for when we mask over the top with the plug artwork that we're going to create. Because I'm doing the plug artwork on top of the black and I want to run some fire at a later stage, what I'm doing now is I'm just basing that area, so only the area where the plug will be, with the base coat white. So my mix is about 50-50, 50% paint, 50% thinners, and I just evenly spray that area. Don't worry too much about overspray because we're going to clean that up at a later date. The idea of this step is just to get some good coverage and yeah, just make it vibrant enough so that when you do mask out, you have something that will show up the artwork that we're going to create. Okay, after allowing the white base coat to dry, you can see now that I've applied some vinyl. This is a spray mask vinyl. What I've done is I've drawn the design on a bit of paper, transferred it onto the vinyl, and then with another sheet of vinyl, I've used that as my application tape. And what I've done is I've applied that to the area where I want the artwork to sit, masking off a positive area. And now I am outlining just where the frayed plug ends are with a 740 black by PPG. It's a really deep black. And as you can see now, I am following and cutting in evenly around the area where we had all the overspray. This just eliminates all of that area and brings the whole bike cover back to black, and it will give me a positive white area to work with for the next step to start detailing the plug. Okay, now that my black has dried, you can see now I can still see where I've drawn out on the vinyl. So I deliberately didn't cover all those areas with the black base coat so that I could still see. I'm now with an X-Acto knife just picking out the areas where I want to spray. So the bits that I'm picking at the moment will be fairly solid black because they're the deep part of the plugs. And now I'm going to the button areas where they will get sort of a medium tone of black just to create some shading on the white and to give that 3D impression of the buttons. Okay, so you can see I've unmasked those areas that I've cut. Remember to always use a sharp blade in your knife to make sure that you don't cut too deep into the base colour, as there is no clear and it could lift. So now with the airbrush and a thinned out black, I'm just rendering those plugs. Using your reference, just keep referring back and make sure that you get the light source correct. So I'm just blending down, and in the darker areas I'm going virtually solid. Allow your overspray to travel as well. Utilize the stencil because that way you can hit one edge and it'll just travel and fill in the extra bit nice and light for you. So I've just removed the plug and now I'm ready to render the plug. Okay, so now we've just got a blue in the airbrush and I'm going to start rendering the plug. So what I'm doing is I'm colouring in the area, but I'm shaping the plug as well. So using my reference, I'm leaving the white highlighted areas, and this will give you a 3D impression by just using one colour, and then that way you can define it later with more highlights and shading. So try and get even coverage, but don't stress too much and leave those bits out. Leave the highlights so that you get that 3D impression as you go along, and then in the next step we'll shape it even further. Okay, so the blue's all done and now I'm coming in with a white highlight tone. This is an SEM white. That's probably a 70-30 mix, so 70% thinners, 30% paint. I do like to keep my paints thin, that way it stops the spattering. I just basically hit all the highlighted areas, so everything where that light source is hitting, that's what I'm going to attend to. And I've just switched now to the black. So this will be a thinned out black, extremely thin, so again no spattering. Bit harder to control, but if you drop your air pressure, especially if you've got a CMC micron, you can adjust the valve on the front to drop the air pressure without affecting the paint flow. So basically I'm just shaping the plug, cleaning up any overspray, and just going in and adding all those little details, the grooves, Everything that I can see off that reference, that's what I'm going to render. And again, follow your light source, because you do want this to look rather 3D when it's unmasked. And because you've got a combo of freehand and masking, it gives you that three-dimensional appearance. So again, nice and close with the airbrush. Clean up the sides as well, even the part on the side here where the wire is fraying, just make sure you don't miss anything. Now switching back to my knife, I'm just going to remove some of the masked areas just so that I can further shade around the edges of the plugs and also the button details, that sort of thing. Run a bit of a shadow in there and go in for finer details. So I've just switched back to white as well, and also using freehand shields just to get some sharp edges without having to remask and make it, too sharp all in one hit. So definitely vary. I use masking tape, I use freehand techniques, I also use these freehand shields. You can also make your own, so don't think you're just limited to what you can buy. Experiment and try a few different things. You can spray through a lot of items as well, so definitely experiment. That's what airbrushing is all about. So I'm just now rendering the plugs, and now I'm removing the other positive mask. Give it a bit of a clean just to make sure that everything's perfect before you start painting over the top. Especially fine overspray, if there is grease and grime, it will show up. So a water-based degreaser and even a tack rag is always a good idea. So now I'm just freehanding in some areas just to pop the plug out a bit, run a drop shadow under that plug to really bring it forward and give the illusion that it's sticking out from the bike cover. And again, just some more freehand techniques. If you're not comfortable with freehand, just cut paper masks, do whatever you have to make life a bit easier for you. And then the final step now is just to re-highlight those areas just where the light's catching. Remember, I'm going to run flames off this, so you're going to get more reflections and everything coming off here. So yeah, it's going to look pretty cool once it's all done. So we just sort of take your time and render and keep referring back to your reference. That's probably the best advice that I can give anyone, especially with something like this. So, just paint what you see and take your time. So I'm just cutting in again, deepening some of those shadows and just cleaning up around the edges and just giving it an overall more of a 3D appearance.